Coming live from the Tivoli Met Radio studio here on Auraria campus, this is All Sports with Gerardo. Thank you for listening to All Sports through Met Radio on mymetmedia.com, live every Thursday from 3:30 to 5 p.m. This is your host Gerardo, and all I talk is sports. On the show today, I am going to talk about NFL football, Major League Baseball, NBA basketball, NHL hockey, college football, and college basketball. Before I start the show, I hope you all had a great Christmas, New Year's, and a great week. All Sports with Gerardo is finally back, and this is the first All Sports with Gerardo show for 2020. To start off, at the middle every month, I post a video or talk about one stadium I went to, so stay tuned for future videos from stadiums across the U.S. For the month of December, I posted a video where I talked about Citi Field and my experience there. You can go watch that video on YouTube. You can also view videos from the past and subscribe to my YouTube page at All Sports with Gerardo. Moving on now to Major League Baseball, Don Larson, the only pitcher to throw a perfect game in the World Series, passed away on January 2nd. He was 90 years old. In Game 5 of the 1956 World Series, Don Larson retired all 27 Brooklyn Dodgers he faced. Dallas Keuchel and the White Sox have agreed to a 3-year contract. Hyun-Jin Ryu and the Blue Jays have agreed to a 4-year contract. Edwin Encarnacion and the White Sox have agreed to a 1-year contract. Cole Calhoun and the Diamondbacks have agreed to a 2-year contract. Travis Shaw and the Blue Jays have agreed to a 1-year contract. Pitcher Dylan Batikas and the Mets have agreed to a 1-year contract. Catcher Jason Castro and the Angels have agreed to a 1-year contract. Luis Robert and the White Sox have agreed to a 6-year contract. Right now I'm going to take a commercial break. When I come back, I will talk about the NFL. Welcome back to All Sports with Gerardo. Moving on now to NFL football. Tom Brady passed Peyton Manning for second on the all-time list in passing touchdowns. Michael Thomas broke the record for the most single-season receptions in NFL history after passing Marvin Harrison's 143 receptions back in 2002. Michael Thomas set a new single-season record for the most receptions. Michael Thomas passed Hall of Famer Randy Moss for the most receiving yards through a player's first 4 seasons. Michael Thomas has been having one of the greatest receiving seasons of all time. Michael Thomas is number 1 in receiving yards, number 2 in receiving touchdowns, number 1 in first downs, number 1 in targets, number 1 in catch percentage among wide receivers. He has 9 games with 10-plus catches this season, and he broke Marvin Harrison's single-season catch record. This season, Lamar Jackson has more total touchdowns than the Cardinals, Raiders, Browns, Bills, Lions, Colts, Giants, Panthers, Falcons, and Rams. More total yards than the Jets and Redskins. More rushing touchdowns than the Bengals, Lions, Steelers, Jets, and Jaguars, and more rushing yards than the Jets and Dolphins. This season, Lamar Jackson finished the season with a 14-2 record, 43 touchdowns, 3,127 passing yards, 1,206 rushing yards. The Ravens won the AFC North. They are the first seed in the AFC. They have home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and they have a first-round bye. Lamar Jackson is the first quarterback in NFL history to throw for over 3,000 yards and rush for over 1,000 yards. This season, Lamar Jackson finished the season with 36 passing touchdowns, which is a Ravens single-season franchise record. This season, Lamar Jackson had 24 touchdown passes against the blitz, which led the NFL. This season, Lamar Jackson had 3 games with 5+ passing touchdowns and 0 interceptions, which ties Tom Brady for the most games in a single season. The Ravens have set an NFL record for the most rushing yards in a single season in NFL history. Adrian Peterson passed Hall of Famer Walter Payton to move into 4th with the most rushing touchdowns in NFL history. In 125 games, Julio Jones is the fastest wide receiver to reach 12,000 career receiving yards. This is the 6th straight season Julio Jones had 1,200+ yards. Travis Kelce is the fastest tight end in NFL history to reach 500 receptions. Christian McCaffrey became the 3rd player in NFL history with 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards in the same season. Christian McCaffrey is the 4th player to record 100+ receptions in 2 of his first 3 seasons. Kyler Murray joins Cam Newton as the only rookies to have 3,500+ passing yards and 500+ rushing yards. Jameis Winston is the 8th quarterback in NFL history to pass for 5,000 yards in a single season. Jameis Winston is the first player in NFL history with 30 passing touchdowns and 30 interceptions in the same season. Derek Carr's 55 career losses is the 2nd most by a quarterback in his first 6 seasons. Baker Mayfield was the first Browns quarterback to start all 16 regular season games since 2001. Ryan Fitzpatrick has beaten the Patriots while playing for every AFC East divisional rival. Kirk Cousins is now 0-9 on Monday Night Football, which is the worst record in NFL history. After 9 seasons of Jason Garrett being the head coach for the Cowboys announced they are moving on from Jason Garrett and he won't be a part of the organization going into the future. The Browns fired head coach Freddie Kitchens. The Giants fired head coach Pat Shurmur. The Redskins parted ways with team president Bruce Allen. The Browns parted ways with general manager John Dorsey. The Redskins hired Ron Rivera to become their next head coach. After playing 15 seasons in the NFL, Darren Sproles announced he is retiring from the NFL. Marcus Peters and the Ravens have agreed to a 3-year contract extension. Linebacker Whitney Mercilus and the Texans have agreed to a 4-year contract extension. Marshawn Lynch has signed a contract with the Seahawks for the rest of the regular season and playoffs. Drew Lock is the first Broncos rookie quarterback to win 3 of his first 4 career starts. Draymond Jones was named AFC Defensive Player of the Week. Philip Lindsay became the first undrafted free agent to record 2 1,000-yard rushing seasons. In his 2nd year in the NFL, Philip Lindsay had back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons. The Broncos beat the Lions 27-17 on Sunday, December 22nd in Denver. So looking at this Broncos-Lions game, this was definitely a game that the Broncos could win, especially that it was here at Mile High Stadium here in Denver. And with the Broncos having their final 2 regular season home games here in Denver, the Broncos definitely had a chance at winning both of these games, especially this Lions game. Now, this Lions team is a lot different from the Lions team from the beginning of the regular season, especially that the Lions don't have Matthew Stafford at the quarterback position now that we're at the end of the regular season. The Lions actually placed Matthew Stafford on injured reserve for the rest of the season before this Broncos-Lions game. Also, in this Broncos-Lions game, this was the return for kicker Matt Prater back in Denver since he was released from the Broncos. After the Broncos released Matt Prater, he was picked up by the Lions, and this is the first time Matt Prater has returned back to Mile High Stadium here in Denver since he's been a member of the Lions. Now, the reason why I bring up Matt Prater, he was a great kicker for the Broncos when he was the kicker for the Broncos. But Matt Prater will always be remembered for that kick he did back in 2013 when the Broncos had an historic season, especially on the offensive side of the football with Peyton Manning in that Broncos offense. Matt Prater kicked that 64-yard kick, which set a new NFL record for the longest kick by a kicker, which Matt Prater still holds up until this day. So this was definitely a return for Matt Prater. Matt Prater stated that Denver will always be in his heart and his mind since he played most of his career here in Denver before he went to the Lions. So during this Broncos-Lions game, it was definitely a great game. It was a close game up until the end of the game, and the Broncos were able to hold on and win this game since the Broncos were able to play better on offense and defense than the Lions. So if we take a look at this Broncos-Lions game, for the Lions, it was definitely different since they didn't have Matthew Stafford at the quarterback position, and it was David Bloom, a backup quarterback, that was playing for the Lions. David Bloom was able to make some plays every now and then, but that Broncos defense, they were able to get to David Bloom, and they were able to sack him a few times. So there's no doubt that that Broncos defense played really great against that Lions offense, especially since they were able to get after quarterback David Bloom by sacking him a couple times and setting that pressure on him. And they definitely got to his head later on in the game. Now the Lions were able to score 17 points, and for a little bit, it was a close game. It almost looked like, were the Lions going to win this game with a third-string quarterback? But the Broncos were not going to let that happen. And Danny Amendola and Marvin Jones definitely had a decent game with David Bloom throwing the football to him, and they were able to run the football pretty well. But the Broncos were able to hold on to the end and get that 10-point lead, and they ended up beating the Lions 27-17. Now, if we take a look at the Broncos, they definitely played great on defense. They were able to hold the Lions to 17 points. But the player that stood out on the defensive side for the Broncos was Draymond Jones. He had to step up in this game, and he definitely showed why he deserves a roster spot in 2020. And he was able to get to David Bloom, sack him a couple times, and pressure him a couple times. After the type of game that Draymond Jones had against the Lions, he actually ended up being AFC Defensive Player of the Week after the type of performance he had against David Bloom in that Lions offense, since he was able to pressure David Bloom and he sacked him a couple times. So that was definitely the player that stood out on defense. Now, taking a look at the Broncos offense, the player that really stood out was Deshaun Hamilton. He had a big game, and he definitely caught a few passes from Drew Lock, and he definitely got a lot of yards. And Deshaun Hamilton definitely had a career-high game against the Lions. So Deshaun Hamilton definitely showed why he could be the second wide receiver on the Broncos offense going into 2020 with the type of game that he had against the Lions. And with the Broncos having Courtland Sutton being the number one wide receiver, the Broncos are definitely looking forward to Deshaun Hamilton being that second wide receiver, or Deshaun Hamilton being one of the top wide receivers on that Broncos offense in 2020 and going into the future. But in 2020, the Broncos are definitely going to be looking for that second wide receiver behind Courtland Sutton, whether it's Deshaun Hamilton, somebody else on the roster, or somebody they bring in through free agency or in the draft. But if we take a look at the Broncos offense, the Broncos definitely had a great passing game from Drew Lock. Drew Lock definitely had a great game against the Lions. He was able to make those passes to Courtland Sutton, Deshaun Hamilton, Noah Fant. The Broncos running game was pretty decent with Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman. So with the Broncos being able to score 27 points, that's how they were able to beat the Lions in this game. In the final game of the regular season for the Broncos went up against their divisional rival, the Raiders, here at Mile High Stadium in Denver. So actually, the Broncos' final 2 regular season games were here in Denver at Mile High Stadium against the Lions and against the Raiders. The Broncos beat the Raiders 16-15 on Sunday, December 29th in Denver. This Broncos-Raiders game was definitely a close game, and somehow the Broncos were able to pull off this victory and win this game by 1 point. But if you watch this game between the Broncos and their divisional rival, the Raiders, you wouldn't even know how the Broncos were able to win this game. With all the chances that the Raiders had at winning this game and the type of plays that they were making, but those big plays that they missed because the Broncos defense was able to stop them near the end zone, that's the reason why the Broncos were able to win this game 16-15. And it was definitely a close game since the Broncos just won this game by 1 point. But the reason why the Broncos won this game was not because of their offense. Even though their offense had a decent game, it was because of the defense. And that Broncos defense, especially in the red zone, showed why they were the number 1 red zone defense in the NFL this season. So with the Broncos defense making those big plays when it mattered, especially in the red zone, from stopping that Raiders offense from scoring touchdowns or more points, that's the reason why the Broncos were able to win a close game against the Raiders in the final game of the regular season. Now, if we take a look at this Broncos-Raiders game, to start off with the Broncos played pretty decent on offense, even though they only scored 16 points, but it was enough to seal the victory. Yes, they could have scored more points, and they could have easily won this game, but they were able to do enough on offense to win this game. In the final regular season game, Drew Lock had a decent game, and he also showed why he could possibly be the franchise quarterback going into 2020 and going into the future. The Broncos running game showed up. In this Broncos-Raiders game, Phillip Lindsay only needed 42 more yards to record another 1,000-yard season. And Phillip Lindsay would have the opportunity to have back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons if he was able to get 42 more rushing yards in this Broncos-Raiders game, which Phillip Lindsay landed up doing. So congrats to Phillip Lindsay on recording another 1,000-yard rushing season. And this was actually his second 1,000-yard rushing season. And this will be his back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing season. Phillip Lindsay also set a record for having back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing yard seasons. Phillip Lindsay only became the 4th player in Broncos franchise history to record back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons. But he also set a record for being the first undrafted running back to record back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons. So congrats to Phillip Lindsay on setting those records. In this Broncos running game on offense definitely showed up with Phillip Lindsay having a big game, recording his 1,000-yard rushing season. Royce Freeman was also a huge impact in this game. Also, Courtland Sutton had a big game. He was able to make those catches, get more yards. He was able to get over 1,000 yards this season. So the Broncos offense in this Broncos-Raiders game was able to do enough to seal the victory in the final regular season game for the Broncos. Now, if we take a look at the Broncos defense, they were able to stop the Raiders from scoring more than 15 points. And when the Broncos defense needed to make the plays, they did. And that's the reason why the Broncos were able to beat the Raiders in a close game, 16-15, in the final regular season game of the 2019 season. And if it wasn't for that Broncos defense, I don't think the Broncos would have won this game. The Broncos offense played decent, but they were only able to score 16 points, which was enough to win this game. But the reason why the Broncos won this game was because of their defense. They were able to make those plays when it mattered, especially in the red zone. The Broncos defense showed why they were the best red zone defense and why they were number one in red zone defense across the NFL this season. But the Broncos defense also showed why they were one of the best defenses in the NFL this season, after the type of performance that they had against the Raiders in the final regular season game. If it wasn't for that Broncos defense in the red zone, from stopping that Raiders offense from scoring more points or touchdowns or converting that 2-point conversion at the end of the game to win the game against the Broncos, there's no way the Broncos would have beat the Raiders in this game. But when the Broncos needed to make plays, especially on defense, they made plays. Now, the player on the Broncos defense that saved the game for the Broncos was Shelby Harris. If you watch that Broncos-Raiders game, especially at the end of the game, when the Raiders were trying to make that 2-point conversion to seal the victory and beat the Broncos here in Denver in the final regular season game, when Derek Carr threw that pass, that Raiders wide receiver was wide open. And if you missed the play or you saw it too fast, it looked like the Raiders won the game when Derek Carr threw that pass. But if you rewatch that play, or you're able to watch that play, if it wasn't for Shelby Harris on the Broncos defense deflecting the football after Derek Carr threw the football, there's no way the Broncos would have won this game against the Raiders. That Raiders wide receiver was wide open. And if Shelby Harris didn't deflect the football, the Raiders would have won this game. If it wasn't for Shelby Harris deflecting the football in this Raiders game, like he deflected the football in the Steelers game last season, after Ben Roethlisberger was trying to throw the football into the end zone to seal the victory, and after Derek Carr was trying to convert a 2-point conversion by throwing the football into the end zone to win the game, there's no way the Broncos would have beat the Steelers last season, but especially the Broncos would not have beat the Raiders this season. So, Shelby Harris was definitely the hero of the game in that Steelers game last season and in this Raiders game this season. If it wasn't for Shelby Harris deflecting the football in the end zone last season, and if it wasn't for Shelby Harris deflecting the football as Derek Carr was throwing the football to a wide open Raiders wide receiver, there is no way the Broncos would have beat the Steelers last season, but especially the Raiders in the final regular season game of the 2019 season. So Shelby Harris was definitely the hero of the Broncos-Raiders game. Now, if you take a look at the Raiders, with all the chances that the Raiders had on offense and defense, but especially on offense, you would have thought, why did the Raiders lose this game? And if you watched the game and you saw all the chances that the Raiders had in the end zone, and all they had to do was make that pass, you would have thought, how did the Raiders lose this game? The Raiders had all these chances of scoring all these points and these touchdowns and beating the Broncos in the final regular season game here in Denver and of the 2019 season. And the Raiders didn't play that bad on offense or defense, but they just were not able to do enough to seal the victory against their divisional rival here in Denver in the final regular season home game for the Broncos and in the final game of the 2019 season for the Raiders and for the Broncos. Derek Carr definitely had a decent game for the Raiders. Hunter Renfrow definitely had a big game against the Broncos. Hunter Renfrow was definitely Derek Carr's number one target throughout the Raiders-Broncos game. Hunter Renfrow definitely had a big game since he had a lot of catches and a lot of yards. But when the Raiders needed to score touchdowns and score more points in the end zone, Derek Carr and Hunter Renfrow were not able to make those plays in the red zone to seal the victory for the Raiders. This Broncos-Raiders game would have been an easy victory for the Raiders if they were able to make those plays in the end zone. But at the end of the day, the Broncos defense showed up. They were able to stop the Raiders from making those plays in the red zone and from beating the Broncos here in Denver in the final regular season home game. Both the Broncos and the Raiders wanted to win this final regular season home game, but the Broncos showed why they deserved it more. But that Broncos defense showed they were one of the best defenses in the NFL this season, and that they were the number one red zone defense in the NFL this season. This week is the NFL Wild Card Weekend. Now that the regular season has come to an end, you know what time it is? It's now time for the NFL playoffs. So this is the first week of the NFL playoffs, and it all begins with the NFL Wild Card Weekend. So right now I'm going to update you with the Week 16 final scores, the Week 17 final scores, and I'm also going to tell you the NFL Wild Card Weekend schedule. So to start off, here are the Week 16 final scores and highlights from this week of NFL football. The Texans beat the Buccaneers 23-20. The Patriots beat the Bills 24-17. The 49ers beat the Rams 34-31. The Dolphins beat the Bengals 38-35. The Jets beat the Steelers 16-10. The Giants beat the Redskins 41-35. The Ravens beat the Browns 31-15. The Saints beat the Titans 38-28. The Raiders beat the Chargers 24-17. The Broncos beat the Lions 27-17. The Eagles beat the Cowboys 17-9. The Chiefs beat the Bears 26-3 on Sunday Night Football, and the Packers beat the Vikings 23-10 on Monday Night Football. Now looking at Week 17, here are the final scores and highlights from this week of NFL football. The Dolphins beat the Patriots 27-24. The Bears beat the Vikings 21-19. The Chiefs beat the Chargers 31-21. The Packers beat the Lions 23-20. The Falcons beat the Buccaneers 28-22. The Eagles beat the Giants 34-17. The Titans beat the Texans 35-14. The Cowboys beat the Redskins 47-16. The Broncos beat the Raiders 16-15, and the 49ers beat the Seahawks 26-21 on Sunday Night Football. So now that the regular season has come to an end and it's now time for the NFL playoffs, Next week, I will give you a recap on the 2019 regular season for all 32 teams, but I'm also going to give you a recap of the 2019 season for the Broncos and what the Broncos need to do this off-season to improve their team for 2020, so the Broncos will have a playoff team in 2020. So make sure to tune in to All Sports with Gerardo next week, as I will give you a recap of the 2019 regular season for all 32 teams, but I will also give you a recap of the 2019 season for the Broncos and what they need to do this off-season to improve the team for 2020. So now that it's the NFL wildcard weekend, here's the NFL wildcard weekend schedule. The Bills go against the Texans, the Titans go against the Patriots, the Vikings go against the Saints, and the Seahawks go against the Eagles. Now, if you take a look at the NFL wildcard weekend schedule, we have some great games in the first weekend of the NFL playoffs. And if you take a look at these matchups, there is a possibility of some upsets this weekend. And we're going to have to wait and see who wins these games and if there are any upsets. But there is a possibility that there will be some upsets in some of these games, especially in the AFC wildcard games. We got the Bills going against the Texans, the Titans going against the Patriots, the Vikings going against the Saints, and the Seahawks going against the Eagles. Now looking at these games, all four of these games are going to be great games. Right now I'm going to give you my predictions for all four of these games and who I think's going to win these games. Taking a look at this Bills-Texans game, this is definitely going to be a close game, and it may come down to the end of the game, and that may determine who wins this game. The Texans will definitely have a great chance at winning this game since it's down in Houston, but don't underestimate the Bills. The Bills could definitely go down to Houston and upset the Texans. The Bills have been playing great on offense and defense. And now that it's time for the playoffs, it's time for the Bills to show why they're an NFL playoff team. So I could definitely see the Bills going down to Houston and upsetting the Texans. But the Texans still have a chance at winning this game since it's down in Houston. We got the Titans going against the Patriots. The Patriots have not been the same Patriots team we've seen for the last 2 decades, especially this season. In the last few games of the regular season, the Patriots haven't been playing the way the Patriots do for many years. And if the Titans can go up to New England and take advantage of this struggling Patriots team, the Titans can definitely pull an upset and win this game against the Patriots. Even though this Titans-Patriots game is up in New England, I would not underestimate the Patriots, even though they haven't been playing the way they've been playing in the past this season. The Patriots are one of the best home teams in the NFL, especially in the playoffs, so you don't want to underestimate the Patriots. I would give the Patriots a big chance at winning this game, but the Titans can go up to New England and upset them if they don't play their best football. Also, this is the first time in many years that the Patriots are actually playing in the wild card weekend. This is unfamiliar territory for the Patriots. They're usually playing in the divisional round and they have a first round bye in the AFC and they're either the first or the second seed. But this season, that didn't happen, especially in the games that they should have won. They lost those games, especially in the final regular season game. The Dolphins were able to go up to New England and upset the Patriots in a close game at the end of the game. So this season, the Patriots are playing in wild card weekend, and they won't have a first round bye and be the first or second seed in the AFC this season. The Vikings go against the Saints. I would definitely say that the Saints are going to win this game. It's down in New Orleans. the Saints play their best football down in New Orleans, with the type of season that the Saints are having, but especially Drew Brees and Michael Thomas, there's no reason why the Saints should lose this game to the Vikings, especially being down in New Orleans. So I would say the Saints win this game. The Seahawks go against the Eagles. This could definitely be a close game. The Eagles would definitely have a great chance at winning this game since it's in Philadelphia. But I could definitely see the Seahawks going to Philadelphia and beating the Eagles. And I would say, even though that this game is in Philadelphia, I would say the Seahawks are going to win this game just because the Seahawks are playing better football than the Eagles. The Eagles barely made the playoffs. The only reason they got into the playoffs is because they won the NFC East, and someone had to win the NFC East. And the Eagles landed up winning the NFC East instead of the Cowboys. So I will say the Seahawks have a better chance at winning this game. They got Marshawn Lynch. They're going to have a great running game. They're going to have a great offense, a great defense. If the Seahawks show up in this game and they play great on offense and defense, but especially on offense, and they score a lot of points, they have a passing game and a running game from Marshawn Lynch, there should be no reason why the Seahawks lose this game to the Eagles. The Seahawks almost took the NFC West from the 49ers, and they were almost the first seed in the NFC. So don't underestimate the Seahawks, even though they landed up being a wild card team, because they were almost the first seed in the NFC. So that's the Week 16 final scores, the Week 17 final scores, and the NFL wildcard weekend schedule for the NFL. So right now I'm going to update you with the current playoff picture in the AFC and NFC. The Ravens won the AFC North. They are the first seed in the AFC. They have home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and they have a first round bye. The Chiefs won the AFC West. They are the second seed in the AFC, and they have a first round bye. The Patriots won the AFC East, and they are the third seed in the AFC. The Patriots clinched their 11th straight division title. The Patriots are the first team in NFL history to win their division every year in a decade. For the first time this decade, the Patriots will finish the regular season without the number 1 or 2 seed and a first round bye in the playoffs. This is the first time the Patriots will play in the wild card round in the last 10 years. The Texans won the AFC South, and they are the 4th seed in the AFC. The Bills are the first wild card team in the AFC, and they are the 5th seed in the AFC. The Titans are the second wild card team in the AFC, and they are the 6th seed in the AFC. The 49ers won the NFC West. They are the first seed in the NFC. They have home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and they have a first round bye. The Packers won the NFC North. They are the second seed in the NFC, and they have a first round bye. The Saints won the NFC South, and they are the third seed in the NFC. The Eagles won the NFC East, and they are the 4th seed in the NFC. The Seahawks are the first wild card team in the NFC, and they are the 5th seed in the NFC. The Vikings are the second wild card team in the NFC, and they are the 6th seed in the NFC. So that's the current playoff picture in the AFC and NFC. In the final regular season NFL Power Rankings, the current top 10 NFL football teams are the Ravens, 49ers, Saints, Chiefs, Packers, Patriots, Seahawks, Vikings, Bills, and Texans. Right now I'm going to take a commercial break. When I come back, I will talk about the NBA and NHL. Welcome back to All Sports with Gerardo. Moving on now to NBA basketball. Former NBA Commissioner David Stern passed away on January 1st. He was 77 years old. LeBron James moved into second in all-time games played on Christmas. Russell Westbrook moved into 16 in all-time assists. Kyle Kluver became the 4th player in NBA history to record 2,400 plus career three-pointers. Wilt Chamberlain, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and James Harden have the most 40-point games in NBA history. LeBron James has the most career points before turning 35 years old. LeBron James is the only player in NBA history to record 30,000 points, 9,000 rebounds, and 9,000 assists in his career. LeBron James was named AP Male Athlete of the Decade. Kawhi Leonard was named AP Male Athlete of the Year. Kawhi Leonard became the 5th NBA player to win this award. After playing 17 seasons in the NBA, Zach Randolph announced he's retiring from the NBA. Nikola Jokic moved into 10th in all-time triple-doubles. The Nuggets extended head coach Michael Malone's contract through the 2022-2023 season. So right now I'm going to update you with the current schedule for the Nuggets. I'm going to tell you every team the Nuggets went up against this past week and the final scores of those games. And I'm also going to tell you who the Nuggets go up against in the next week. To start off, the Nuggets went against the Timberwolves, and the Nuggets beat the Timberwolves 109-100. The Nuggets went against the Lakers, and the Nuggets beat the Lakers 128-104. The Nuggets went against the Suns, and the Nuggets won a close game against the Suns 113-111. The Nuggets went against the Pelicans on Christmas Day, and the Nuggets lost to the Pelicans 112-100. The Nuggets went against the Grizzlies, and the Nuggets beat the Grizzlies 119-110. The Nuggets went against the Kings, and the Nuggets beat the Kings 120-115. The Nuggets went against the Rockets, and the Nuggets lost to the Rockets 130-104. The Nuggets went against the Pacers, and the Nuggets beat the Pacers 124-116. This week, the Nuggets go against the Wizards, the Hawks, and the Mavericks. So that's the current schedule for the Nuggets. That's all the teams the Nuggets went up against this past week and the final scores of those games. And that's also who the Nuggets go against in the next week. In the Week 11 NBA Power Rankings, the current top 10 NBA basketball teams are the Bucks, Heat, Clippers, Lakers, Celtics, Nuggets, Raptors, Mavericks, Rockets, and 76ers. Moving on now to NHL hockey. In the 2020 NHL Winter Classic at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas on January 1st, the Stars beat the Predators 4-2. So right now I'm going to update you with the current schedule for the Avalanche. I'm going to tell you every team the Avalanche went up against in the last week and the final scores of those games. And I'm also going to tell you every team the Avalanche go up against in the next week. So to start off, the Avalanche went against the Blackhawks, and the Avalanche beat the Blackhawks 4-1. The Avalanche went against the Hurricanes, and the Avalanche lost to the Hurricanes 3-1. The Avalanche went against the Blackhawks, and the Avalanche lost to the Blackhawks 5-3. The Avalanche went against the Golden Knights, and the Avalanche beat the Golden Knights 7-3. The Avalanche went against the Wild, and the Wild beat the Avalanche 6-4. The Avalanche went against the Stars, and the Avalanche lost a close game to the Stars in a shootout 3-2. The Avalanche went against the Jets, and the Avalanche lost to the Jets 7-4. The Avalanche went against the Blues, and the Avalanche beat the Blues 7-3. This week, the Avalanche go against the Devils, the Islanders, and the Rangers. So that's the current schedule for the Avalanche. For all the teams the Avalanche went up against this past week and the final scores of those games. And that's also who the Avalanche go up against in the next week. Right now I'm going to take a commercial break. When I come back, I will talk about college football and college basketball. Welcome back to All Sports with Gerardo. Moving on now to college football. It's that time of year now. It's time for the college football bowl games. And to finish off the year 2019, in the final 2 weeks of 2019, we had all the college football bowl games. All the big name college football bowl games were in the final days of 2019 and on New Year's Day going into 2020. So in the final 2 weeks of 2019, we had all the college football bowl games. We had a lot of great college football bowl games, whether they're the big name college football bowl games or they're not the big name college football bowl games. The college football bowl games in the final days of 2019, on New Year's Eve, on New Year's Day, and in the first few days of 2020 were the best college football bowl games. I hope y'all got to watch some of the college football bowl games. If you didn't watch any college football bowl games, you definitely missed out, whether they were the big name college football bowl games or they were not. All the college football bowl games were all great games. So to start off with the college football bowl games, here are the final scores from the big name college football bowl games in the last few weeks. Air Force beat Washington State 31-21 in the Cheez-It Bowl. Number 10 Penn State beat number 17 Memphis 53-39 in the Cotton Bowl Classic. Number 9 Florida beat number 24 Virginia 36-28 in the Orange Bowl. Number 6 Oregon beat number 8 Wisconsin 28-27 in the Rose Bowl. Number 5 Georgia beat number 7 Baylor 26-14 in the Sugar Bowl. Number 1 LSU is the 2019 Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl champions after beating number 4 Oklahoma 63-28. During the bowl game, Joe Burrow had 8 touchdowns and 493 passing yards. Justin Jefferson had the best performance by a wide receiver in Peach Bowl history after he had 14 catches for 227 yards and 4 touchdowns. Number 3 Clemson is the 2019 PlayStation Fiesta Bowl champions after beating number 2 Ohio State 29-23. Clemson has won 29 straight games, and since 2011, Clemson is 102 when leading the game after 3 quarters. The 2020 College Football Playoff National Championship game will be between number 1 LSU and number 3 Clemson on Monday, January 13th. Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Cam Newton, and Tim Tebow are the quarterbacks to have 30 passing and 20 rushing touchdowns in a single season. In the Week 14 College Football AP Top 10 poll, the current top 10 college football teams are LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, Utah, Oklahoma, Florida, Minnesota, and Michigan. Moving on now to college basketball, after number 1 Kansas lost to Villanova. This is the 5th loss by the AP number 1 team before the start of January, which is the most in a single season in the poll era. In the college basketball AP Top 10 poll, the current top 10 college basketball teams are Gonzaga, Ohio State, Louisville, Duke, Kansas, Oregon, Baylor, Auburn, Memphis, and Villanova. Right now I'm going to take a commercial break. When I come back, I will talk about the end of the show. Welcome back to All Sports with Gerardo. Moving on now to end the show. What to watch for this week in sports. The Bills versus the Texans, the Titans versus the Patriots, the Vikings versus the Saints, the Seahawks versus the Eagles, NFL wildcard weekend, NFL playoffs, NFL football, college basketball, the Nuggets, NBA basketball, the Avalanche, NHL hockey. Moving on now, on the next show, I will talk about NFL football, Major League Baseball, NBA basketball, NHL hockey, college football, and college basketball. I hope you all have a great weekend. Tune in to the next All Sports with Gerardo show next Thursday. I want to say thank you to everybody that listens to All Sports through Met Radio here on mymetmedia.com. Subscribe or like my pages on social media at All Sports with Gerardo. Until next time, this is Gerardo.